Welcome back to our discussion, New Approaches to Federal Human Capital, sponsored by Asundre here on Federal News Network. I'm Tom Temin. Our guest is Jerry Buchholz, the strategic advisor at Asundre and former chief human capital officer at NASA. And Jerry, I want to talk about workforce planning and some of the
Mm.
aspects of that, including we talk about skills development and skills needed in the future. How can HR and how can the other functions within the agency collaborate to really know what skills that agency will need going down the line?
So collaboration is absolutely the key there. One of the things that I did that worked out so very well for me was to build really good relationships with the CFO for sure and the CIO as well. And that triangle of people in an agency has so much power and influence. And if you can wrap the general counsel in as well, oh my gosh, that group of people together can really help the senior leaders of an agency be the best leaders of people that they can be. And at the end of the day, that is the ultimate goal of human capital management. So you have your HR processes, which is human resources. Human capital management is all about influence and all about helping those leaders see things in new ways, apply people's solutions to long-standing problems, and to lead people to the very best of their ability. Because very few decisions are made inside the human capital office. All of those decisions are made by senior leaders. And if you can be that support, that help, that guide, helping them to see that I see that our mission is shifting. What kind of workforce needs to shift as well in order to ensure that on the day this new mission arrives, we have the people that can accomplish the mission. And it can be very funny. People will talk about innovation like it's this object. The only thing that can innovate is a human brain. And people talk about mission accomplishment with regard to metrics, processes, procedures, workflow, etc. But none of those things actually accomplish work. Only people accomplish work. And in the press of business and the desire to document, to measure, sometimes that can be lost. And so, what the human capital officer's job is to always keep the acknowledgement that nothing around here happens at all unless our people are all headed in the same direction.
Sure. So again,
Mm.
looking down the line, then is can the tool sets that we talked about earlier and the new processes, can they help all of these functions come together on these are the skills we're going to need? And then we can get into, well, can the current workforce be reskilled to that level? Do we need to hire? And that whole dynamic. But first of all, how do you predict and can the tools help?
Tools can certainly help. At the end of the day, though, because federal government employees tend to have longer tenures, unlike the private sector, and because they have everything that happened before, everything that's happening now, and they can see because the change rolls out with the passing of a law or the issuing of regulation. These things are on a fairly smooth evolutionary track with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I have found that mostly they know. Deep down inside, mostly they know. What they need is some facilitation to really talk it out. And then once you have that, it can be the laying out of the actual implementation plan, chunking it out into reasonable work streams. One thing that always really resonated with people in my experience were what we call sand charts. So you show one occupation on the chart that's very large right now, but we know over time, due to changes in automation and a shifting, that's going to go down over time. And if you look at that in a 10-year window and you take all your mission critical occupations and you sand chart them out, that starts to lay out a really nice hiring strategy for you. So that's the strategic thinking. And here, there are certainly assessments and tools that can be used to help you work your way through that process. And depending on how large your organization is, you're going to need more tools if your organization is bigger. The other thing, though, that where technology can really, really help, we have had this very bad habit of letting people's tools, their skills, and their occupations expire before we even sit back and think, oh, well, now what are we going to do with these people? And some of that is we're just really, really hoping this change isn't going to happen. Totally normal human behavior. But at that point, it becomes such a challenge to reskill individuals who maybe have been doing their work the same way for 25, 30 years. And what we want to do is get to this idea of every day I continuously refresh my skills, that I have a personal commitment to professional development, and the management structure of my organization has that same commitment. And most importantly, my supervisor has that commitment to have an honest conversation with me about when I get to the point that I need some refresh, and then to provide me with the opportunity to begin to refresh my skills. And that's where technology can really, really help. And we've had fits and starts of success with, online learning systems in the federal government, but that's another place where some, significant refresh needs to happen so that there is more interactive, more online classes, more train the trainer, more peer-to-peer learning is very successful, especially with the first line supervisors. So there's a lot that can be done, and definitely technologies that can support that.
It strikes me then that the types of people that in the long run the government hires have to be maybe less tied to a particular skill at the moment than to the skill of being able to be reskilled.
Absolutely. And that can be a challenging thing to measure. And our hiring system does require us to measure. But this idea of being a continuous learner, of valuing the idea of continual learning, of having a sense of curiosity and resilience. Oh my gosh, I don't know how you make it through a federal government career without resilience. So it's a quality, but it's also a skill. And so you're looking for people who have a pattern of continuous learning, self-directed continuous learning, because supervisors have, I think we counted once, 85 things they have to do every day in an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
So it's, they can't be, doing one-on-one coaching with every single employee all day long. So there's this component of independence, of curiosity, of desire to continuously grow and develop that everyone who works for the federal government needs to have, regardless of their profession.
And with respect to giving people the tools to acquire new skills, training used to be something that you did in a classroom, or you went somewhere, or someone came to the agency. But it strikes me that the technology we've been talking about, and the one we're using, for example, right now,
Yes.
offers new ways to be efficient at people getting new skills, and for the agency to administer the tools people need to acquire those skills.
Absolutely. And certainly there will always be a place for in-person learning. And, ideally, a blended model is the way to go, because other things happen in training besides the acquisition of knowledge. Relationships are built, sometimes very important relationships. So, for example, when you're doing leadership development and you want to build a cadre of people who can continue to support each other as they go through their leadership journey, some in person is important. For reskilling and keeping professional skills up to date, this medium can work really, really well, especially if It's being done on a continuous basis. You do need to have good content. But one of the things that always held us back before was people struggled for this environment to be meaningful for them. And that's one of the huge changes that's happened across the entire planet in the last 10 months is people have found a way for this environment to be meaningful and to have meaningful human interactions in a virtual environment. And we need to grab a hold of that and integrate it into our human capital strategies and not just relax at the end of all of this and let it slip by the wayside, but say, this is not the end, this is the beginning, and we're going to continue to build on that.
So basically, then, if the government can get to do that, it will become a more competitive employer.
Absolutely, because think about it now, regardless of where your physical facility is located, and the federal government has facilities in some really obscure places that it can be hard to find talent to work. But now the entire world, not just the United States, US citizens across the entire planet are now in your candidate pool. Military spouses deployed to foreign country, foreign service spouses, all kinds of people that were not you were not available to you before. So especially organizations that either have shift work or desire shift work, people who work, in what is the middle of the night on the East Coast is the middle of the day in Australia. So, there's that kind of thing going on too. So just the broader thinking of the implications and the plus sides of what we have all learned to do.
All right. On that note, we will have to end the show. Thank you so much for great comments. We've been hearing from Jerry Buchholz. She's the strategic advisor at Ascendre and former chief human capital officer at NASA. Earlier, we heard from Tracy DeMartini, the chief human capital officer at the General Services Administration. I'm Tom Temin. You've been listening to Federal News Network. For more on this show, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Ascendre.